Check one, two. Very dangerous. Hello. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Discover Rotman's Executive MBAs. My name is Scott Liao, Vice Dean Undergraduate and Specialized Program. I'm very excited to be here. On behalf of Dean's Office and our Dean, Susan Christopherson, who couldn't make it today, it's my pleasure to welcome you all to Rotman School of Management campus tonight. I'm also joined by my colleagues, Craig Deutsch, Vice Dean of Faculty, Brian Golden, Academic Director, Global Executive MBA and for Healthcare and the Life Sciences, and Jan Marsmith, Academic Director, Rotman Bocconi Global Executive MBA. We are also very much looking forward to chatting with you later this evening during the networking. To recognize this land is an expression of gratitude and appreciation to those whose territory we work and live on. We wish to acknowledge this land on which University of Toronto operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are very grateful to have this opportunity to work on this land. At this time, I would like to welcome to the podium Sarah Wolf, who graduated from the Executive MBA program in 2017. Sarah Wolf is an independent consultant and established executive leader who works through an equity lens at the intersections of health and well-being, governance, and impact. She worked from a deep understanding of Indigenous communities, grounded in 25 years of midwifery and nursing clinical practice, and 5 years in the impact investing and social finance arena, including running a national Indigenous impact fund. She leverages her skills and experiences to bridge Indigenous knowledge and leadership in all aspects of her work and towards the creation of meaningful opportunity for reconciliation. She is also a proud citizen of the Brunswick House First Nation in the Anishinaabe-Oski territory of Treaty 9. Welcome, Sarah.
I've already given everyone a heads up that I don't do 1 minute. So welcome to my future alumni peers. Yes? I'm so impressed and so excited to see so many faces here. I remember coming to one of these sessions quite some time ago now. You heard I graduated in 2017, almost a decade ago. I came to one of these sessions totally terrified, and I can't remember who did our master class, but being a little bit terrified and a little bit in awe of the potential of what an MBA could bring for me. And so I'm delighted to be able to be here and to share that perspective with you. Some of the best memories I have are during that time. Also, some of the hardest memories that I have are from that time. It's not an easy program. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you, it's so great, you should come. Come hang out with us. It's a really intensive program. It's incredibly powerful. And the memories that you will make here, the skills that you will build here are so powerful. And you don't even realize that you're taking those things in until you find yourself 5 years later on your WhatsApp former EMBA class group chat going, does anyone have the notes from such and such a class? Because this is coming up again and I need it. And you have this amazing new beautiful network that you get to reconnect with and keep in touch with and celebrate with. And it's celebrating job promotions and career advancements and babies and supporting each other through life and death. And that community becomes your family, and it goes with you long after your time through the MBA. So highly consider it, highly recommend it. Can be really transformative for your life. And as you heard, I'm a midwife, a nurse and a midwife. And a lot of people ask, what is a midwife doing an MBA? I didn't know at the time either. And, you know, we don't have a classical training in finance or marketing or business administration or any of those pieces. But what the MBA gave me was enough information and insight in all of those things. And with working hard and leaning on your peers and accessing the amazing resources that you can get here, you can shift to anything. And as you heard, in the last 5 years, I actually shifted from midwifery, a strong clinician, to impact investing because, well, with an MBA, you can do anything. And of course, midwives can do anything too. Shout out to my other midwife and the colleague in the audience as well. It's now my pleasure to introduce your masterclass instructor. They gave me something to read, but I go way back with this person, and I'm not going to give you all of the details of how far back, but what I can tell you is that Nouman Ashraf is like a kindred spirit with me. We both work at that intersection of inclusivity and innovation in our practices. He was one of our professors during our time almost a decade ago, and was an incredible and insightful and progressive leader that gave me it gave language to the things that I was experiencing as an Indigenous person in this program, as someone who works for social justice and for equity and strives for that inclusivity in all of the spaces that we intersect in. He's won dozens of awards. He's had increasingly progressive leadership positions within Rotman. He does things all over the city to try and make sure that Rotman maintains this leadership connections in the community and those engagements that are so important, but also to bring those pieces back into Rotman, to this community, so that it's not just the family here, but by extension, our family grows. I'm so honored and pleased to introduce my good friend, Nouman.
Thank you, sir. Good evening. How's it going? All that is about to change. May I please ask you to stand if you're so able? Thank you. Jazz hands, jazz hands, jazz hands. Don't hurt each other. Together, please. I'd like you to pay attention to which thumb you have over which thumb. I always, by default, have my left thumb over my right thumb. Out again, please. Jazz hands, jazz hands, jazz hands. Together again, please. This time, I would like for you to switch your thumbs. Please put your non-dominant thumb over your dominant thumb. How does that feel? Weird? Sit down, please. You're in the right place. I say that not because Rotman or executive programs is a weird place, but because this is a place exactly as Sarah's told us. It'll give us the combination of great experiences and challenges that we may or may not believe we're worthy of conquering. But that's a journey. But let me build on my colleague Scott's acknowledgement. I feel incredibly grateful every single day when I come to the University of Toronto as an alum a few times over to be able to teach on the traditional lands of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and most recently Mississauga to the credit. And colleagues and future graduates, not potential, but future graduates, I say this not simply because it's one of the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, but for a more fundamental reason than that, that's linked to my work in leadership. You see, institutions of higher education like the University of Toronto, in my mind, only really exist for two reasons. Reason number one is knowledge creation. And reason number two is knowledge mobilization. And I don't believe we can speak meaningfully either of knowledge creation or of knowledge mobilization unless and until we recognize the knowledge systems of the ones who have come before us, the knowledge systems of those on whose land we work, but also the knowledge systems of those that are continuing to deal with the daily challenges that emanate from systemic phenomena, such as residential schooling, the 60s scoop, and the travesty that continues to be murdered and missing Indigenous women to this day. If you find yourself going down a downward spiral of guilt and shame this early in our conversation, I want you to stop. Because I don't believe that guilt and shame are meaningful drivers of leadership behaviors. We have a choice. The choice that I am going to advocate for always, instead of guilt and shame, is commitment and love. And I know exactly what you're thinking. WTF. What the falafel? Like, why am I in a business school and the prof is dropping the L word? It's not even leadership. Well, James Baldwin once said that love allows us to take off the mask that we feel we cannot live without, but we know we cannot live within. One more time. Baldwin always requires a second reading for me. All of us in this room, in my view, feel a particular level of pressure to say the right things, to use the right language, to use the right acronyms, and so on and so forth. But that pressure can sometimes lead to what we think of as performative leadership. And from where I stand in the world, that's just plain old BS. And of course, by that I mean bold statements. And bold statements don't do anything around changing the world. I think we have something to work on. And that's why my course at the Rotman School, one of many, is called Emancipatory Leadership, Enabling Impact for All. Why emancipatory leadership? Leaders can do great things for themselves and their organizations, not because they don't have strong preferences or biases, but despite them. Imagine how much more self-aware, actualized, and impactful they might be if, one, they had some measure of how these strong preferences and biases are getting in their way. Two, they have some tools to mitigate for the impact of these strong preferences and biases. And three, could co-create a culture in which these tools would have currency. So my model of leadership is a three-dimensional model: personal, interpersonal, and organizational. For the next 15 minutes, we'll have a conversation about this. We'll talk about one tool in particular, and then we'll do Q&A. And let me warn you, I need 3 solid questions, or else I don't give up the floor. All right? So batter up. I want to begin with this reminder and challenge from Tanya Talaga, who in her book, All Our Relations, reminds us that in Ojibwe and Cree culture, leadership didn't mean power. It meant caring. Let me ask you, I see some heads nodding. Let me ask you, how does this reframe of leadership resonate with you? What I'm asking for is agree, disagree, don't care. I want to hear all of it. Yes, please tell us your name and what strikes you about this. Jen. Excellent, welcome. Right. Right. Thank you. In your experience, healthcare isn't delivering on the promise of care, we're losing the plot. 3 more, please. Agree, disagree, don't care. What does it mean to you? I promised you, by the way, in my sessions, there's no such thing as a stupid answer. Only stupid people. Just kidding, relax. Just making sure you have your snacks for the evening. Yeah, please, tell us who you are. Hey, Joyce. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. The focus on power alone, not taking into account what people need from us, can lead to a lack of motivation and sometimes resignation. Couple more, please. Just fixing your hair, that's legal. That's legal. Yeah, please tell us who you are. Daniel. Okay. Welcome, Professor. There's no such thing as former professor. We're always professing, you know. It's good. It's good. Right. Demonstrating care actually gets you somewhere, right? For sure. Please, and you are. Hey, Jade. No, it's all right. We welcome all kinds of languages. Digital marketing, If you don't have followers, you got no leadership platform. And if you don't care for your followers, how would you get them to do your thing? Please. Hey, Richa. Right. Nice. Power only gets you so far. It's caring that gets you the rest of the way. On the other hand, I may have missed. Yes, please. Tell us who you are. Sure. So Jamil says there needs to be a balance between power and caring. I don't disagree, but I want to say that I want to take out the word balance out of there and suggest there needs to be a congruence, right? A book recommendation I have for you shamelessly is from one of my faculty colleagues, Tiziana Casciaro, and her colleague, Julie Baccaliana at Harvard. It's called Power for All, that recalibrates how we think about power. Last comment goes over here. Please and thank you. Yes, and you are. Hey, Hannah. Amazing. Hannah's saying, in other words, no one cares how much you know unless they know how much you care. Sounds like we're going to have a robust conversation, but we don't even have time for Q&A. But let's go.
Hello, Nouman. Hello, Nouman. Hello, Nouman.
It's not Nouman.
Hello, Nouman. Hello, Nouman. Nouman!
It's Nouman. It's not Nouman.
Nouman!
It's Nouman. Not Nouman. It's Nouman. Nouman. Hashtag hustle.
We're good? Excellent. If you take nothing away from our conversation, please, please, please take this away. That leadership work is people work. If you can't love them, you can't lead them. Asterisk, one more time. The leadership work is people work. If you can't love them, you can't lead them. Asterisk number one, and there's only two, by the way. It's not that you have to love everyone that you lead, but in everyone that we lead, there must be something that we love to see grow and to develop. In other words, we have to care enough about individuals to understand what is their aspiration and what is their development goal that connects that aspiration to impact. The late great Peter Drucker once said, if you don't know by heart the personal professional development plans of those who report up to you, you have no business having them report up to you. Asterisk number two. And if we're not leading across differences, we're not really leading. All we're doing is we're hanging out in our comfort zones. I want to pause for a second and connect you to the program. In all of our executive programs, we are going to help you get comfortable embracing discomfort. I love Sarah's point earlier on, right? It's only when we are forced to come out of our shells and to interact and work on things tangibly that we can practice this. This is a sign outside my office. What do you notice by the sign? Not a trick question, I promise you. Yes, please. Braille, thank you. Accessibility, what else? Braille, great. Yes. No title, no degrees, right? What else? I was fumbling for my keys one day and I saw something. Yeah. Black and white. Last comment, yes. Right, totally, I'm really not that important here, clearly, right? Look, what I noticed was that, you know what a name is? That's on a piece of cardboard that can easily be slid out. And next time the caretaking staff does this, in comes the next occupant of suite 6062. It was a tough day for me, let me tell you. But the moral of the story here is this. None of us really, truly own the tuxedo or the dress. We just rent it. All of us as leaders have a limited amount of time and opportunity to do something with this role, this position, and the experience. So what do we do? For me, I would say that we must insist on meaningful impact as leaders. And that to me is the other half of caring. Caring so we can actually deepen the impact and have the kind of impact only we can have with others doing the work with us. Midwives, physicians, politicians, administrators, engineers, you name it. But how do we define impact? Put your hand up if you've had an MRI experience. One word, how was your MRI experience? One word, please. Less sarcastically. Okay, not so much fun. Are you, yes, okay, others? Yes? Sorry? Claustrophobic. Yes. Okay, so you enjoyed it. Okay, there's always one person in the audience who does enjoy it, and my reminder to them is, you ought to get out more often, right? But this machine was designed by a guy named Doug Dietz and his team in GE, and the two big complaints about MRIs are they are loud and they're expensive. So this machine, and one like it, was quieter and cheaper, and they were super excited. Doug Dietz tells a story of going in for the launch of the very first of these machines at the Children's Hospital in Pittsburgh, except what he sees there breaks his heart. The very first patient sees this, freaks out, clings on to their parent and says, Daddy, I can't do this. I'm too scared. The parent says, you got to be strong. We spoke about this. And they say, can't do this. The radiologist picks up his phone and in comes an anesthetist. And this child is out cold. That gets a shock. He asks the radiologist, how often does this happen? And they say, you mean of the times they show up for their appointments? So what do you mean? Only half the time do they show up because they're so scared. And of the times they show up, upwards of 80%, 80, have to be sedated if they can find an anesthetist on call that particular day. And if not, he asks to go back in line. 8 to 10 weeks. Time out. Why do we need an MRI scan? Why can't we just do an X-ray? What's the worst thing we can find? In soft tissue, starts with C, ends with R, has N in the center. What do we know about cancer in young people in particular? It's aggressive because when you're younger, all your cells are multiplying, the healthy ones and the cancerous ones. From an innovation, a technical definition of innovation, is this machine innovative, quieter and cheaper? Technically. Let's go back to this. From impact measurement definition of innovation, is this machine innovative? Sorry, who says yes? What if the ones who need it the most are too scared to actually go through the experience? How's that impactful? Sorry? It's not a market fit. I'm not talking about markets, I'm talking about humans. I understand that, technically. And that's exactly my perspective, that the disconnect between human need and the market push is why leadership is in a crisis of credibility. That's what I want to address today. Doug Dietz and his team, by the way, didn't go back to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. They went to Palo Alto. They went to the D School at Stanford, and they spent a lot of time on their hands and knees with clipboards, right, taking notes, talking to young people, their caregivers, their parents, the nurses, And then they came back with, wait for it, this. What's one word that describes this to you? Super fun, for real. What else? Yes. Creative. What else? Playful. But wait. I'm coming to you. I haven't forgotten. 6 weeks before their appointment, they get chapter 1 of a story. And the story started on a beautiful island. The sun's always kind of shining. Sort of like Palo Alto, which I think is the anchor bias here. Right? Week 2, a devastating hurricane wrecks the island. Week 3, the residents take stock of devastation. Week 4, they send an SOS in a bottle into the ocean. Week 5, pirates take over the supply ship that the island has set in the direction of the affected island. Week 6, a week before their appointment, they get the mission brief. Next week, you got to show up, but you got to be really quiet because the pirates can't know you're there. Do you think they show up for the appointments next week? Heck, they show up in costume. That's not the children. That's not the patients. That's the radiologists, the oncologists, the surgeons, the social workers, everybody. What changed? That's what I mean by we need as leaders to aim for impact. When we just look for market solutions, we can find ourselves in a very particular alley, which is great ladder, wrong wall. And leaders have to have the humility to try different things, to ask the question, how did we get here? But before that, to ask this question. That's Doug Deep. His team asked questions like this. What are 3 chairs and a blanket? Over and over and over again. To young people, to adults, to everyone. There are 4 versions, by the way, of these adventures. Doug Deese tells a story, I don't have time to show you the video, where he says a parent asked to speak to him and his team after their child had gone through MRI and said and confessed, this is our 5th attempt. I just want to thank you for making this possible. As they're talking, the child tugs at the parent's sleeve and says, Mommy, can we come back here tomorrow? So Doug gets all welled up in tears. The nurse does too, and Doug apologizes because he doesn't know what he's done. And she says, are you kidding me? That is why I got into healthcare. Why am I saying this? We think about leadership skills in a very particular way. I'm going to say to you, if you were to ask me, what is the most important and meaningful leadership, not attribute, but skill or behavior, to me, it's empathy with the word before it. And that word is behavioral. It's behavioral empathy. Let's talk about definitions. I don't believe that we can empathize with ideas. That's why you're here, for the Rotman experience. I believe that you can only really empathize with experiences. It's the ability to experience and to understand what others feel. Let me pause. The message hierarchy is really important. It's the ability to experience and to understand what others are feeling. The F word? Really? Why are we talking about feelings in the business school? Dan Goleman, who teaches emotional intelligence at Harvard, says it's not only that feelings matter, rather, feelings are what mattering is all about. While maintaining a discernment, a clear discernment about your own and the other person's perspectives and feelings. Empathy is not about drowning somebody else's experience. Empathy is about retaining the tension with the curiosity to discovery. My call to action is this, that we have to move from being, and this is the work, by the way, of Professor Dolly Chugh at the Stern School, NYU. And Dolly talks about moving away from being believers to builders. I wrote to Dolly, I said, I think we have to move from being well-intentioned believers to being gritty builders. And she loves it. What are some believer behaviors? What do you think? What do believers do? Come again? Sure, but before that, they talk about the idea. They preach the idea. They're confident in the idea. What do builders do? They build, but they try out new ideas. Have you built anything like me? If you built something from like IKEA or something, first of all, always 2 screws missing for me, right? But I've never finished a piece perfectly. And I've never done that without scuff marks on my hands or my, that's a builder's experience. You iterate, and get better. The model I promised you. To me, the model I'm going to introduce you to is called cultural fluency. I don't love the term cultural sensitivity. I don't think anyone is looking for us to be more sensitive. I also don't love the term cultural competence. Help me out here. What's the opposite of competence? Exactly right. There you are. You're so incompetent. We, on the other hand, are so competent. Don't love it. Fluency begins with this awareness that how all of us experience the world, right, is determined. The starting point is our culture. It's both deeply powerful and largely invisible. From this awareness to the understanding that others have equally compelling, yet equally powerful and largely invisible systems of culture. But the thing here is there's no room for supremacy. Their views and worldviews and ways of thinking about the world are equally valid and important. From this awareness to understanding to skill, to navigate these and to leverage these in service of impact. When we do this recursively, I call that fluency. It picks up on the metaphor of language. Yes? We don't use it, you lose it. And I used to teach, by the way, that language begins with the acquisition of vocabulary until I was giving a distinguished university professor lecture at U of T. And I had a distinguished university professor of linguistics. That professor, I said, yes, professor, that actually language does not begin with the acquisition of vocabulary. I said, okay. He said, language begins with, wait for it, attachment. We all speak the languages of individuals with whom we have attachment. Our parents, our grandparents, our caregivers. If anyone is or has been in a cross-cultural relationship, you pick up some language skill, even if it's menu language skill, to impress others. Attachment. Leadership work is people work. If you can't love them, you can't lead them. Here's the funny thing. This stuff is not new. This is the advice that Hippocrates offered his medical students millennia ago. Observe the nature of each country, diet, custom, the age of patient, speech, manner, expression, even their silence. I've changed the pronoun to make it more inclusive. One must study all these signs and analyze what they portend. What's the hack here? Observe, engage, inquire. What's the platform? Caring. Care enough to observe. Care enough to engage. Care enough to inquire. So if this is so simple, what do we do next? I think we have to move away from what I think of as cultural insights into cultural outsights. Cultural insights are oftentimes information heavy. This is stuff that we can Google, and that's a problem. I don't think we can actually simply empathize with Googleable information. I think cultural outsights that we have to force ourselves into are all about experiences. And I promised you, in our executive programs, we'll be part of those. 2, we have to move away from this view of groups being homogeneous and monolithic. We know for a fact that there's as much diversity or more within groups as there is across groups. And number 3, we actually have to have a healthy dose of skepticism about our ability to be objective in every context. I said this before, I'll say it again. Strong preference, bias, same deal. In closing, if you ask me what gets in the way of us practicing this, I'm going to show you my favorite cartoon of all time from the New Yorker. It says one snail to the other. I don't care if she's a tape dispenser. I love her. We are all susceptible to the same condition called homophily. We're drawn naturally to people who think like us, have been trained like us, and process like us. And the way to get past that is to understand that we have a role. This is Professor Anita Rotman at the London Business School. Her research about the growth mindset and its application in organizational behavior shows the following. Your belief system about the other person and their ability to learn is that first step. I'm going to give you something very counterintuitive. I'm going to say to you that in order for us to lead inclusively, we have to have a growth mindset about those that actually have exhibited bias, as opposed to a slap on the wrist. Her research shows that when people both hold a growth mindset and confront, they exhibit a more positive outlook about the person who expressed bias. Why is that counterintuitive? If we only condemn and not confront, there's a challenge, and here's the challenge. However, minorities and women have growth mindsets but don't speak out to address prejudice, they have an equally negative outlook as those who have fixed mindsets, regardless of how they respond. The challenge is the tool, but also the mindset behind it. Angela Duckworth, in her book Grit, reminds us that our work, the passion for the work, is a little bit of discovery, followed by a lifetime of deepening. We hope that you consider our programs as part of that lifelong commitment to deepening your craft, to leading with inclusion, and doing that collectively. Thank you very much for your time. We're kind of out of time for Q&A. Do we have time for one? Oh, we do. Never said that to a prof, eh? 2 questions, please and thank you. Yes, in the back. We'll start in the back. We'll get you a mic if that's okay. Do you think we have the power to influence caring? I believe we do. And my response is first by modeling it, right? And I have a kind of a dorky view about culture. And that's this. I don't believe that culture is something that happens to us. Rather, the behaviors that we walk past, that is the culture that we enable. Back to Professor Anita Rotman's work, right? When we see people expressing bias, and we hold them, not in contempt, but we think of them as individuals who can, in fact, learn and grow and understand the impact, irrespective of intent, things change. Have you heard of this thing called microaggressions? Have you heard of these? In our course, we talk about this idea of micro acts of courage. How do we actually intervene when we are party, when we are witness to the expression of bias? Because let me tell you something. We're tired of people coming to us after the fact and saying, Sarah, Nouman, I'm so sorry about you in that conversation. Too little, too late. So yes, I think we can. What do you think? A fellow hopeaholic, I like this. Yes. A couple more, I thought we had some. Yes, please. Whatever you like. Tell us your name, please. Yos. Okay. And what do you mean by our? Sure. Okay. Yeah. Sure. I would love if more democracies had the Danish model of care in healthcare, in education, and in social assistance. And we had that, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But my direct response to you, one of the privileges of teaching leadership, it doesn't have to spend a lot of time, in my experience anyways, in the vault of the Harvard Business School case log. All I have to do is to go on the web, right? I think we see multiple examples of failure of leadership in markets, within organizations, public institutions, and so on and so forth. So what I'm saying to you is that leadership is both in a crisis of credibility and in need of being rescued from that crisis. And I think we do that here, but elsewhere as well. And to me, the power of executive education is that we give you just in time ideas, frames, experiences. You can try it out in real time. I'm happy to have a conversation with you as well, furthermore. I would also say that there's a lot of demand for our time for precisely that kind of conversation. Look, I don't want to belabor the point, but Sarah has spoken about this in her introduction. We need both language, tools, and credibility to change how we approach this work. One more question. Oh, online, yes, please. What do we got, Stephen?
Yes. As a leader, how can you achieve collective cultural awareness? Is it possible to instill this fluency in others, coming from a position of leadership?
Collective cultural fluency begins by us signaling the importance of learning about it. So to me, there are many ways of thinking about this. It's a shift that I'm advocating for from what I think of as diversity by default into inclusion by design. I'll close here. I want to give you some definitions. Diversity to me is the potential that resides in the entire range of human difference and experience. Inclusion is our ability to leverage the potential that resides in the entire range of human difference and experience. Equity is when we're able to, with justice, leverage the potential that resides in the entire range of human difference and experience. Belonging is a result when individuals experience justice consistently in the ways in which their potential and aspirations are connected. In other words, we cannot speak about belonging unless we institutionalize our commitment to justice. Thank you very much.
I don't know how to follow that up, like MRIs and all sorts of good stuff. Thanks everyone for being here tonight. My name is Mohammed Salhi. I'm the Managing Director for Recruitment and Admissions here at the Rotman School. And it's an absolute pleasure to spend time with all of you today and to be with our alumni panel this evening to dive a little bit more deeply into the experience of participating in an executive MBA program here at the Rotman School. There is a Slido, so there will be an opportunity for you to participate by asking questions online. So we'll start with having a conversation together. We'll introduce the panelists, and then we'll also turn to you for some Q&A. And then, of course, far be it for me to stand between you and a good networking opportunity. So we'll try to make sure we get you all out on time. So why don't we start over that? We've got a photographer, which is fabulous. We've got to document our experience tonight. I appreciate that. Thank you. We'll start at the very, very far end of the stage over there. I'll just ask each of you to introduce yourselves, what you do currently, and what cohort and program you graduated from.
Hey, working? Yeah. So my name is Mayo Ravichandran. I'm an emergency physician at the Scarborough Health Network. I'm also one of the associate medical directors in the emergency department as well. I graduated from the GEMBA-HLS 3 cohort, which is 2022. Is that all the questions?
Yeah, that's fabulous. Thank you. Over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gazala Almeida. I'm with the I graduated from the Executive MBA program in 2017 with Sarah. And I'm celebrating 25 years at TD Bank this July. I'm currently with TD Insurance.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sohail Najat. I'm Director of Project Delivery at Hydro One. 19 years at Hydro One, and I graduated last year, 23, from the Executive MBA program.
Hi, I'm Annette Pose. I am an entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur, and my company is the World Leader Institute, where our mission is to inspire solarization. So if you want to chat with me at the break, we can talk about what that means and what it means for our global community. I am a recent 2024 GEMBA graduate.
Fabulous. Welcome to all of you. So guys, we're going to start with you to kick us off with the first question. So not long ago, you were in this room and you were exploring an MBA option. Tell us about what led to your decision to make that leap into graduate management education?
Sure. So when I started my undergrad, I had two choices. I was either going to get a commerce degree or I was going to go into sciences, and I chose the sciences, and I ended up getting a biology degree, a bioethics degree. But I always knew, even back then, just because of this attraction that I always had to the world of business, that one day I would come back and do my MBA. Now, I knew I had thought that was going to happen a lot sooner than it did. But life, as you all know, just throws different challenges at us through the years. And I had many of those challenges. However, 16 years after I had finished my undergrad, I ended up coming back. There was no question that Rotman was the place. I looked at a lot of schools in Canada, but always knew that Rotman stood out, far stood out from all the rest. And so the decision to come back was tougher because, as you all know, once you graduate from your undergrad, start living life, have a family, a career, that it actually becomes tougher to come back to school. But the support, and we can talk about the support systems in place that are needed. Once you line those things up, it actually, for me, became a really, really easy decision to come back to school.
Fabulous. So two things that came up there: support systems, and then the choice to come to the Rotman school. So Sohail, maybe tell us about why Rotman? Why Rotman versus some of the other business schools that are out there for an EMBA?
The program, the learning style at Rotman for me was the big selling point. The way it accommodated my work and life balance. And I work in a really very busy, even when I was sitting there, I was answering emails and texts for my executives. So having the flexibility to say, all right, I'm off every other week on a Friday and don't bother me, but I'm out on this program. That works. Like, everybody has to answer that, and the support system, like traveling to another city was not for me. Going online, that didn't work out for me either. I actually was going to start to be about 41, but COVID was at that time, and I put it off because I could, being in class and interaction and being with people and networking, that was one of the biggest selling points for me. So I knew that I was going to get that networking experience through Rotman.
Fabulous. And we'll get to networking a little bit, and hopefully some opportunity for us to do that a little bit later today. Annette, if you can tell us a little bit as well about the support system. So speak to what that looked like in terms of gearing up to apply, having conversations with your employer, family, people in your life, because this is a big commitment. To Sarah's point earlier, it's a big commitment. There's a lot going on. So walk us through that process.
Okay, you're going to hate that you asked me that question, so I'm going to be fully transparent. My family doesn't actually know that I did this.
Whoa!
They might be watching it on YouTube now and finding out for the first time, but let me tell you why. So I did a doctorate actually at University of Toronto, and I had 3 kids during my PhD. And so I can speak to what it takes to have a support network, but I'm going to tell you why I didn't tell people. And part of it was because I think after I've been in school for forever, we could talk about it at the break, but it was more about understanding. I guess the question is, it's not about time management, it's about priority management. And so when you figure out what it is that you feel really called to do, help comes in many forms, and it doesn't have to be limited just to your family or your friends. It comes in the cohort that you are studying with. It comes with the future clients that you're going to be working with, or the faculty members that are supporting you. So I guess maybe in a way, you might traditionally think you need to tell your family, but I'm here to tell you I did it and nobody even knows, and I managed it. And my kids are 16, 14, and 12, and so it wasn't like the 4-2 and brand new when I was doing my doctorate. But help comes in many forms. So I would say if you start with knowing what your priorities are and how doing an executive MBA is going to help you fulfill that, and you are open and willing to receive help, then the question is just asking, where is it and what form can it come in? And you will be amazed and blessed with the opportunities that come to support you along the way, including those of us that are at the panel that if you run into a rough time, you can call people and ask for help. Help is always available.
Fabulous. Anyone want to add to that?
Yeah, I want to say that the help from both your place of work and your family and friends, it's all together. They will all have to be your support system, let's say, because even your classmates, I did a lot of research, what kind of people coming in this program, depending this university, that university, because you want to be able to rely on them, and they are going to be relying on you. There's going to be that one day that you're going to put your hand up and say, "This is my time out day because I can't do this one. I need help," and then they will do the same thing. So and it's no different than work or at home and family. Everybody has a support system, so that is definitely important, both career-wise and home-wise.
Yeah,
A little bit. Listen. For 15 months, I did no laundry at home. And that was the sweetest deal that ever
unintended
was.
outcomes of the executive MBA, right?
But no, I mean, seriously, I didn't. It's true. But it also meant that was my support, right? My support was Friday, Saturday and Sunday every week. I am completely devoted to this program. What it meant was no laundry, but it also meant I came out of my family's life. My kids at the time were 5 and 10. And really my husband was living, right? Doing the weekend stuff with the kids. But you also balance that with, in a blink of an eye, this program is over. So 15 months, 13 months in the grand scheme of your career trajectory, the life that you have ahead of you is actually really almost like a millisecond, and it really does go by that fast. So
fabulous. Mayo, maybe over to you in terms of expectations. So what was it that you were looking for in an executive MBA program, and how did that change over the course of the program in terms of what you ended up getting out of it?
So for me, when I started looking at the MBA programs, it was fairly early in my career as a physician. So my perspective was a little bit different, and my thought process was also about what my career might look like in the short term, but also in the long term. So what I wanted to get out of my career. And I have to admit, I think the way you asked the question was great, because honestly, I think my goals changed as I went through the program. I think my reservations initially was I had this feeling that I should know exactly what I was looking for as an outcome. So if I wanted to have a specific promotion or the next role in mind before I started entering the program. But the more I spoke to people before I even applied, the perspective changed a bit, because I started to look at kind of more tangible things that I could, skills-wise, transferable skills-wise, that I could get that I didn't feel that I had, or that I had been exposed to in my medical training. And I think anyone who's in medicine or in healthcare would know that that's really not how our training works. Our focus is always on the science and on the health aspect, not on leadership, not on managing finances or on managing large groups of people. We're kind of focused on that one-on-one interaction. So as I went through the program, I definitely started to see a lot of change in terms of how I viewed things, but also in terms of even my own confidence in taking on leadership roles within my own group and within my, if I felt something to change, that I felt like I had kind of an approach, an idea of how to approach that change, rather than kind of getting caught up in the minutia of day-to-day work, which is what, again, as physicians and healthcare workers, that's what we're focused on, in day-to-day individual patients, not the overall structure of the system that we kind of work in.
That's great. And I think in Nouman, are you still in the audience? Is he left? No. What we heard from Nouman, I think, is maybe a good example of that in terms of the way our shifting thinks. So I'm going to go slightly off script, because I was inspired by that conversation, and open up a question to all of you. What was that moment of pivot for you in the program, in terms of something that you heard, that you learned about, that was really, really critical in terms of how you approach your leadership, how you see the world, how you engage with business, with people? and thinking about power of feeling, some of these concepts that he brought up in his sample class this evening. We will start with you.
Okay, I'm already getting teary thinking about it because I know exactly the moment. We were in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, and it was our ethics class, and we were talking about governance. So my company is the World Leader Institute. That's why you can imagine I chose GEMBA, why I chose the Global Executive MBA, because I'm interested at issues at that level. And the topic that we were talking about was global governance. And I remember it hit me so deeply in my heart in realizing that it's a gap in the world and understanding how we lead global decisions differently. Because currently we have 194 countries in the United Nations, but they're individual countries trying to make collective decisions. So we need to retool and redesign how we think about global decision making, which is why I finally feel like I found my purpose. That's why when we say we want to inspire solarization, because we need to have leaders who can think beyond the world, who can think of the world as a whole, not just from their individual country. So that for me was like a transformational moment. I remember the professor was laughing at me afterwards, wondering why I was pacing around like a tiger in the back, but it was because I finally understood why I was destined to be in the program, how the content that I was learning was going to make a difference in who I am as a leader, and what my company is here to do in terms of being of service in the world.
Thank you for sharing that. And this is the transformative education that we offer here at the Rotman School. So I appreciate that vulnerability. Thank you. So how about you?
As Annette was talking, I was thinking about two different moments, really. One is the leadership development lab workshops that we had, like really connected. And it's not anything that you think of an MBA, or I at least did not have any perception about it, but it's one of those unique things that an MBA program, it's these not part of the regular programming workshops that you do, and it really dives into that, actually the whole caring part of what Nouman was talking about, and trying to tap into, well, you're not just here to learn a few subjects. You're here to put them together and, towards leadership and caring for people and taking the next step and finding deep down what it is that you want to do and translating that into how you're going to take it back to your organization. It's not just a collection of courses that you're taking. That was one of the big moments for me, and that workshop, and it really opened my eye of, okay, why I'm here is the right choice that I've made. But then secondly, in group discussions within the classroom, and how passionate some people are about their topic, and whether it's ESG or whether it's finance or social justice, and that bleeds into their point of view of why they are pushing an agenda within the class discussion. And I can kind of really, at least for me, was a lot of takeaways on. Even to this day, I find that I have a lot to say within my company where I see a lot of gaps, and I'm like, well, how could you have not thought about these things? When I think about it back is, well, I wouldn't have thought about it either if I had not been exposed to those different kinds of thoughts from my peers within the class.
Yes.
Great. So I think that for me, there were a few pivotal moments to the program. The first one, though, was probably September, October of the year we started in 2015. It was John Esch's class on mental models. And I remember sitting in that class and I was really confused for the first 30 minutes at least, wondering what the heck he was talking about. And is he talking about some Excel spreadsheet model because that's the only exposure I had ever had to anything being called a model. And throughout the course, I had so many aha moments. Oftentimes you wonder why leaders make the decisions that they make, how they come about making them, the amount of bias that goes into those decisions, a lot of which come from your upbringing, your cultural background, like all kinds of fascinating things that make us like complex human beings that we are. But I would say that was probably one of the most pivotal courses in the program. And I won't give more away because you're all going to experience it firsthand.
I don't know if I had my pivotal moment until the end when we had that leadership retreat. So I went through the program through the pandemic. So our one-on-one in-person interactions was quite limited. We did a lot over Zoom, and we had a few sessions or a few modules in person. But the leadership retreat, I felt was the moment that we kind of got the opportunity to put it all together, because we went through these courses trying to pick up as much knowledge as we can, learn as many things as we can, and retain that for future use. And as you know, with the executive program, we kept working throughout. So that all of that was very, very beneficial. But the questions about, you know, why we do what we do, why are we seeking out these leadership opportunities, or why are we doing an MBA? To do that at the end, I know that's not usually how it's structured, but to do that at the end was also very eye-opening, because it kind of brought back a lot of the questions I had to start with, where my reasons when I thought about it were very different when I started versus when I ended. So that was my kind of the moment where it all came together, and I felt like I had grown a lot more than I really thought. And it went beyond just, you know, our budget and finance and, you know, corporate finance and all those things, which were completely new things for me. So I definitely learned a lot, but that's not what I retained, and that's not what I kind of took away as a whole from the program. And I think, you know, these are the kinds of things that some of the what we call soft skills, or kind of soft courses, where it's a lot more transferable than we realize, and it's a lot more practical than we realize if we're having these types of courses to kind of fall back on to put it all together at the end.
Yeah, I think that's great to hear you all sort of touch on that in some way. There's a lot of humility in terms of identifying the things that you don't know you didn't know, or didn't know that you didn't know at the time, and then sort of coming into things that you about yourselves or about the way that you show up as leaders. Say more about that. Like, what's the one thing that you sort of were all surprised to learn about yourself as you went through either EMBA, GEMBA, or GEMBA-HLS? Maybe Annette, we'll start with you.
Can I go after? I need a moment.
You can go after. Yes, you can.
I'm still in their story, so I need a moment to catch myself. But yeah, come back to me.
I shall. Who wants to jump in there?
All right.
Okay.
I'll go. I thought, you know, at least for me, I've been in my organization a long time. In a way that I have seen a lot of leaders come and go, but in another way, I haven't been to a lot of different companies to see what other leadership looks like. So maybe there's a lot of people out there living the same sort of career as me, where, you know, you've been in one place for a long time. And for me, what I realized is, I thought, well, you know, especially I have an engineering background, so perception of what great leaders should be is, you know, they should know the answer to, you know, why it's 5 centimeters versus 6 centimeters. How they should not know that. But coming to an MBA, and you realize that the level of what others, my peers, expect of leadership is way higher than what I thought. And sometimes mine was higher. But really, you gauge yourself within the industry that you're in or outside of that, and say, oh, this is what, you know, a lot of people my own age, slightly older, slightly younger, that's what they're aspiring to, and that's what they're looking for, great leadership. So it's really eye-opening when you sit in class, and a lot of that is you don't even realize you're taking it away. You know, maybe you're studying accounting, but 2 years later, you really aren't thinking about accounting. You're thinking about the comment that somebody made. That this is what, you know, this is how it should fall through. So that's been a big takeaway from me.
Awesome.
So for me, it was and is the confidence that you actually have the confidence that you can go into any industry, you can go into any kind of a role, and be able to do it. And a lot of that came from the diversity of our class. We had, you just met Sarah, she's a midwife. We had a neurosurgeon, we had oil and gas. We covered our class, the diversity in the class, covered all sorts of industries. And there were so many moments during the course of the MBA where it's like, wow, that's exactly the same challenge that I'm facing in banking, and you're in oil and gas, or you're a neurosurgeon, like working with your team of people. And I think that realization and knowing that what you're gaining in those 15 months is the ability to actually go into any industry or any other kind of job, whether you stay in your company, but you're kind of expanding into other types of business lines. And at the end of the day, you probably don't have enough money to do things. You don't have enough people to do them with, and you still have to solve those business challenges regardless of what industry you're in. And I think that's a really key thing that I took away.
And I think that's such an important thing to highlight in terms of what the makeup of your network is going to look like. Like, even on this stage, we've got someone that does international work and is PhD trained, an engineer, a banker, a healthcare provider, a physician. And so not just the diversity of people and your backgrounds, but the diversity of thought that comes into these classrooms, the diversity of experience, I think is really something special to point to. So thanks for sharing that. Inette or Mayo, anything you'd like to add on that last couple points?
I'd like to add one more thing.
Yeah, one more thing, go for it.
There's a course on power and influence. There's a lot of courses that are really eye-opening, but this course is specifically, it really opens your eyes on what it means to have influence in your company. And there's an exercise that the Professor Tiziano makes you go through, and you realize that, oh, I really need to get out there and know a lot more people than I do now. And for me, that has been a big takeaway. I actually get a lot of my managers, I get them to do it. Like, you do it. And then when they ask about, well, how can I grow? And say, well, let's just start with how many people are you connected with, like internal or external, like, and then I can see where I can help them out with. But it's things that you wouldn't even think about, that it's, when you're outside, and at least for me, or MBA, you're going to learn about these, how to navigate in your company and corporation. And these are like really big takeaways.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. In the audience, how many of you are thinking the GEMBA program, the global one? Okay, a few of you. And how many of you aren't thinking about it, but if I told you a really cool story, you might be swayed to consider it as an option? Okay, excellent. So I'm talking specifically to you because I want to touch on one thing I think that's a little bit unique about my perspective is the global component.
Yes.
And so I'm going to tell you a quick story and then tie it into what surprised me about the experience from a global perspective. Because the story is, I show up 2 days late to the very first module here in Toronto. It's lunchtime. We have 10 minutes to catch the bus to go on our first learning safari. And I have allergies, so I always have a special food with my name on it with plastic wrap. So it's salad and pasta. It's an Italian style lunch. So I take the pasta, put it on the salad, and go sit down at the table, at the head of the table with the entire Italian cohort in the group. And how many of you know Italians and how they feel about pasta and salad? Okay, so I literally, in the first 5 minutes, like infuriated the entire table. They were taking videos of me. They were like saying all kinds of crazy stuff. And it's still a story to this day when we have our class get-togethers that's the thing that I'm most known for. But okay, so why is it relevant and what did I learn about myself? Other than I'm very not culturally sensitive to Italians and their food, and I learned super fast. What I learned in 18 months of traveling with my cohort, so there was 40 of us, give or take, with 30 different countries. I learned how to navigate travel visas, passport control, language and translations, all the technical stuff that you need if you are actually wanting to go and explore and experience the world. I know Nouman talked about experiences. Like this program, you are going to experience the world. At the end of the 7 days or 8 days, you have 14 different languages in your head. You're sitting at the table and these guys are speaking Russian and these guys are speaking Italian and French. And it's amazing to have an insight and a lived experience on a global level condensed into 18 months. So my aha about myself, the thing that surprised me, was like the Grinch. My heart grew like 1,000 times bigger as a result of being in the program.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna ask you to maybe bring in answer the question with regards to like what your aha moment was, but also from the perspective of GEMBA-HLS, our Health and Life Sciences program. Say a little bit about how that maybe facilitated perhaps a different kind of aha that you weren't expecting.
Yeah, no, sure. So I think we one of the biggest things that I understood as a frontline worker in the healthcare system, I think we see a lot of the challenges right away, and I think we're often very vocal, either externally or internally within our group, about all of the things that are wrong with it. Things that we would fix. Why is this not fixed? It's so obvious what the problems are, and I think the perspective I got, and it also helped me try to make these changes, is that you see it from the system perspective. So I spoke about it before. I think you see the challenges within the system, the things that create the inertia to change, that once you understand it better, it becomes less about kind of fighting the system and more about kind of working with the system, within the system, to make the changes that are more reasonable and feasible from the leadership perspective as well. So if you go in with this frustration and without understanding the challenges, you're meeting opposition right away. And this is, we talk about this in the negotiations course as well, where you go in with an understanding of what their standpoint is and why they're, have a little bit of empathy for, why they're not moving as fast as you want them to. But once you go in with that understanding, then you can approach them with a solution that may be actually feasible to them, maybe more palatable to what they're facing as well. And again, during the pandemic, that was daily for us, right? So trying to get, it's not just the leadership, it's kind of talking to our communities, figuring out what the opposition is, what the resistance is, what the barriers are. You approach it with a much different lens and have a different strategy than just keep complaining or keep speaking the same lines over and over about what the issues are without a full understanding of why they exist.
Great, thanks. Thank you to all for those great responses. I'm going to shift to audience questions. There's a couple here on the Slido that I'm going to read. There is one question specifically with regards to the years of work experience required for GEMBA-HLS. So Catherine DeFazio is over here. Just wave. Find Catherine during the networking session. She can say more about some of the finer details around admission requirements. But I got a question in the poll here with regards to GEMBA. So can you talk a bit about how your STA Bocconi experience was and how integrated did you get into their ecosystem?
Oh, it's the same. Integrated both. Like, I feel like I'm bilingual in STA Bocconi and Rotman. So 100, you have your own email address, you get spammed from them as much as you can. I'm just kidding. No, you are fully integrated into the experience. We have 2 modules in Milano where we do learning safari. So you not only integrate into the school itself, but into the local community. They do a really great job of alumni over there as well. So absolutely, I feel like I'm Duolingo in the sense of Milano. Okay, I super messed up on the first module, but I've made up for it, I promise, in the long run.
Fabulous, thank you. Another question here is, did any of you consider American programs as well? What ultimately made you choose Rotman over an American school?
So I can speak to a little about that. I mean, it's funny. So the reason I chose the Rotman program was mainly because of the global aspect of it. But unfortunately, again, the pandemic, this was pre-pandemic. While I was going through the process, nobody was even talking about COVID at the time. So that changed things a little bit. But that being said, I think the global approach to the program still was retained throughout. And I think that was one thing that we spoke about a lot, because a few people thought about deferring to see what happens in the pandemic. A lot of people stuck it out, but what we were pretty impressed about was how quickly we kind of transitioned into Zoom and still managed to retain a lot of that global aspect. So the speakers were still around. And I think we still managed to eke out a couple, or one global visit as well in the middle of the pandemic when things kind of settled down a bit. But I think that that focus on the global part is what appealed to me the most, because we have a lot we can learn from the health systems around the world. Same as any other industry, that there's a lot of knowledge that we can gain from that, and the students also kind of represent that diversity as well. So they bring different perspectives that we may not really consider or get really in any other way. So that was the draw for me, even though it was interrupted a little bit by the pandemic.
Fabulous, thank you. Anyone in the audience here that has a question? We'll start with you. Maybe just share your name before you share your question as well, please.
Hi, I'm Pritesh Sehgal. I just moved to Toronto about 20 days back.
Welcome.
So I have a couple of questions. I'll first continue with the last question that you asked. So in addition to Rotman and schools in US, what about other Toronto-based schools like Schulich or Ivy? Did you come across similar programs, and why did you choose Rotman? That's one. Second is that I would like to understand more about the GEMBA. So does it really give you an access to the Americas as well as the Europe? I mean, can you really, let's say tomorrow, if you start your company, can you access that network in the Americas, in Europe, when through the GEMBA? Third is that it's a personal question. I'm sorry, it's a personal question. So I've had about 9 years of WorkX. I've sat on boards of startups. I've invested in a lot of startups. So now I don't know if I should probably go with a regular full-time MBA or go through an executive MBA. So that's my confusion here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to, in the interest of time, we'll pick one of the questions, and I'm thinking maybe access to the Americas, just from a global perspective. The other two questions we can connect with the admissions team on during the networking session. So the third. Okay. Shall we? Who wants to jump in on that?
I'll jump in quickly. I would say that the network that Rotman and Bocconi have for the GEMBA that I did is global. So 100%. So either you take classes there, you have professors that are from there, your classmates are from there, or their network. So 6 degrees of separation between your professors, the schools, and your classmates. You are global 100%.
Great. We'll reserve the full-time MBA versus the executive MBA conversation maybe during the networking seminar. Anyone else in the audience? I think right in front of you, Catherine, there was a question there.
Yeah, the question is mostly related to the GEMBA program.
And your name, sir? Sorry.
Daniel. I was a former professor in France for 10 years.
Awesome.
What I'm curious about, because I quite like the aspect of carrying, investment, empathy, on all those things. I always told my students, no, I'm not cool. I'm patient and charitable, which is very important. You must be. The question I've got is, what are the practical skills that come out of this, or the practical application for the GEMBA program?
Do you want to take this, and I'll come back?
Sure. Are you kind of referring to the GEMBA's program specifically versus other? I mean, I think like I was saying earlier, the biggest difference is that focus on the global aspect. So to understand the systems and the perspectives from different backgrounds. So if you look at our healthcare system versus the American healthcare system, that was something that we talked about in a lot of our courses. And I think when they did the San Francisco visit, that was a focus to see what they've done so well, what challenges they face, how even though we have two seemingly very different systems, the challenges that we share. So I think those are the kinds of things that we got a chance to explore in depth and really look into. That again, we can read about it, but to be able to actually speak to people who kind of have studied it and who are experts in it is a unique experience. And again, even though I didn't get a chance to go to San Francisco, I think we had speakers from there, from the different health systems there that were able to share their insights we had sessions with them. We had groups, small groups through Zoom that we were able to discuss a lot of these things.
Fabulous. Were you going to jump in as well?
Sure, I'll add. I think your question really is about how does the global experience influence caring as a leader or connection as a leader? Like, what's the tangible outcome? I think that's what you're getting at, right? So I would say, I want you to imagine, have you ever been to summer camp? Okay, so I want you to go back to the days that you were in summer camp and imagine that being in GEMBA is like summer camp, but you see each other every 6 to 8 weeks for 7 to 10 days in a country around the world. So every time we see each other is like a massive reunion, right? We're catching up on what's been going on for 6 to 8 weeks in between, but we spend 7 to 10 super intense days like you do at camp. It feels like you've been together for months after the days that you've been together. And you're solving problems. So everybody's content is generally the same, right? If you Google MBA, Executive MBA, the content is the same. The experience is fundamentally different. So I looked at Harvard as an example, and Harvard doesn't do global. I mean, hashtag Harvard doesn't do global, right? Don't do that. I take it back. Don't do it. But what I'm trying to get at is that it's the experience of, imagine that this is our team. Every module you're assigned to a team, and your team is diverse from people around the world. So we have to navigate language, cultural perspective, industry. I mean, it is so diverse in its experience. You cannot not be changed on a global level going through the program. Hashtag Harvard doesn't do global.
Hashtag Rotman does global and global health and life sciences. So there you go. Okay, I think we're at time. We will transition into the next room through the back doors over there for our networking session. But I really just want to thank all of you for your time. Annette, Sohail, Gaz, and Mayo. Wonderful to hear from all of you. And thank you all for being here tonight. It's such a pleasure to host you all tonight. So round of applause to our panelists. We have Catherine here. We have Stephen here on our admissions team. Please ask as many questions as you'd like. Unfortunately, we couldn't get to all of them on the poll, but we will transition next door, and we look forward to lots of conversation. So thanks for being here.